Another terrifying drone video from the front lines shows Ukrainian tanks attacking Russian trenches near Bakhmut. The Ukrainian media reported as Russia continued to pour troops to try to win a position. In a rare victory, Western tanks were launched into the battlefield of Bakhmut city. Chris Jewers of The Sun based in London has a report titled "Ukrainian Tank Storms Russian Trenches Near Bakhmut" in another terrifying drone video from the front lines, which means a video from a terrifying drone. Another from the front lines shows Ukrainian tanks attacking Russian trenches near Bakhmut. We invite you and your brothers and sisters to follow the translation into Vietnamese through the presentation of Thai Van. This is the terrifying moment a Ukrainian tank shoots into a Russian trench from close range, before soldiers move in to get the job done. The battle took place south of the town of Ivanivsk, west of the besieged city of Bakhmut, which has been at the center of the bloodiest fighting since Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered an invasion of Ukraine last year. Fierce fighting for the city and its surroundings saw the return of trench warfare in Europe, in scenes reminiscent of the First and Second World Wars. In footage captured from afar by Ukraine's 5th Isolated Shock Brigade, a Ukrainian tank is seen rolling down a road through a barren field scarred by war, and stalking its targets. A long, zigzag trench was seen running parallel to the road, like a scar in the ground, with Russian soldiers hiding inside unarmed to fend off the heavily armored tank. Once in position, the tank fired several times into the trench. The first shot narrowly missed, but its subsequent hits hit the target, ripping the ground around the trench and rattling Putin's troops inside. Later, the tank was seen turning back onto the road away from the trenches. But if the Russian soldiers thought this was the end of the onslaught, they were sorely mistaken. The footage shows a second armored vehicle rolling down the street along the trench, this time an armored vehicle fighting infantry inside. First, the vehicle-mounted machine gun is seen firing into the trenches, knocking out 2 Russian soldiers trying to flee. In a desperate attempt to escape the relentless onslaught, Russian soldiers are shown crawling with their hands and screaming as bullets sink into the ground around them. At this point in the video, 4 Ukrainian soldiers appear from behind an infantry fighting vehicle. One of the soldiers, armed with a rocket launcher, fired a rocket into the trench while the armored vehicle provided him with fire support. Then the soldiers fired a second rocket. Both caused massive explosions in the trenches. With their machine guns still providing cover, the Ukrainian soldiers advanced above the trenches and moved steadily through the tunnels stalking any survivors. The number of Russian casualties is unclear, but the devastating footage ends with a long trail of bodies lying along the trenches. Kiev's forces have halted Russia's advance in the devastated fortress city in eastern Ukraine. The soldiers said they were ready to launch the long-anticipated counterattack once the weather improved to push back Moscow. The months-long Battle of Bakhmut, one of the last urban centers in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk province that has yet to fall into Moscow's hands, provided one of the grisliest images of Russia's bloodiest invasion yet. Russia, now in its 14th month. Andriy Yermak, a senior advisor to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, said, "The battles for Bakhmut continue. Fights are underway in the streets, the enemy is trying to surround the city and is failing. Our command has complete control of the situation in the defensive fortress," he said, using the nickname Zelensky gave the city. Western analysts have downplayed Bakhmut's strategic importance, but Ukraine has built its enduring defenses against the now completely destroyed city as a way to weaken Russian forces. Both sides suffered heavy casualties in the fighting in this city. Bakhmut is on the main task of inflicting as much damage on Russia as possible, and most importantly, preparing for a counteroffensive in late April to May, said Pavlo Narozny, a military analyst. Ukraine told NV Radio. He added that fighting was also raging in the south in Avdiivka, a town near the regional capital Donetsk. Soldiers in the trenches near Bakhmut said they were ready for any counterattack. "We are ready, we have to do it, as soon as possible. The opponent must be chased. Right now we are waiting for the weather to change, the mud is an obstacle," Naza, the 21-year-old unit commander, told Reuters. Ukrainian military expert Vladislav Seleznyov said Ukraine would be able to defend more densely built positions west of Bakhmut as long as their route to the west, a lifeline for supplies and wounded, still open. President Zelensky said on Wednesday that Ukrainian troops could withdraw from Bakhmut if they were in danger of being encircled. Zelensky was speaking during a trip to Warsaw, where he said that Poland, a close ally of his country, would help form a coalition of Western powers to supply Kyiv with fighter jets. The Polish government has said it will send 10 more MiG fighters in addition to the 4 previously supplied, but there is no agreement from the United States or other major Ukrainian military backers to send the jets flying the F-16 fighter that Kyiv requested. So far, Russia says its special military operation in Ukraine is necessary to protect its security against what it sees as a hostile and belligerent West. Kyiv and his Western allies argue that Moscow is waging an unprovoked war for territory. 2. Zelensky holds a meeting of the Supreme General Staff of Ukraine regarding the prevention of information leaks and the situation on the front lines. On Friday, President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky held a regular meeting of the General Staff of the Supreme Commander regarding the situation on the battlefield, the formation of new brigades and the prevention of information leaks. Believe. The Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine Valery Zaluzhnyi briefed the participants on the operational situation in the main directions of the front. The commanders of the operational strategic groups reported on the progress of hostilities in the areas within their area of responsibility. Director of the General Intelligence Service of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine Kyrylo Budanov spoke about the possible actions of the enemy in the near future. In addition, members of the General Staff reviewed in detail the formation and armament of the new brigades. The level of personnel training is also considered. The participants were especially focused on measures to prevent information leakage related to the plans of the Ukrainian self-defense forces. The meeting was also attended by Prime Minister of Ukraine Denis Shmyhal, Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council Alexei Danilov, Chief of the Office of the President of Ukraine Andriy Yermak, government officials, heads of real agencies. Law enforcement and security. 3. Why did Putin return to the Black Sea after significant losses? Newsweek had an article titled, "Why Putin's Returning to Black Sea After Significant Losses," which means, why did Putin return to the Black Sea after significant losses? We invite you and your brothers and sisters to follow the translation into Vietnamese through the presentation of Taiwan. According to the Ukrainian military, Russia has recently deployed more military ships in the Black Sea. The Russian ships are said to be able to carry up to 40 caliber missiles and pose a missile attack threat. The increased presence at sea comes after Russia suffered a number of notable setbacks there, including the sinking of the Moskva, the flagship of Russia's Black Sea Fleet. Ukraine this week reported that Russia recently deployed more military ships to the Black Sea to bring its total fleet there to 15. Russian President Vladimir Putin's decision to deploy more forces in the Black Sea may surprise some, as it comes after his navy has suffered several notable setbacks in the waters. After those heavy losses, Russia seems less likely to rely on the Black Sea as a strategic point for the war that Putin launches in February 2022. During a press conference at the Kyiv Press Center, the Operations Command the South wrote that Russia has placed 6 new missile carriers and 2 submarines in the Black Sea. Southern Command spokesman Natalia Humanyuk said the additional ships could carry up to 40 caliber missiles and said the threat of missile attack from the ships was extremely high. The Russian move may be intended to increase pressure on Ukrainian forces as they prepare to attack Russian positions, Northwestern University political science professor William Reno told Newsweek. Reno said Russia's Caliber missile is designed for naval warfare and can accelerate to supersonic speeds when approaching the target. That is supposed to make it more difficult for air defenses to detect in time, although some of the Caliber missiles fired at Ukraine since the start of the intensified invasion have been intercepted, he said. As for why the seas are not a factor in Putin's recent war plans, Reno said his limited ability to operate naval operations in the Black Sea may reflect the perception of the Russians. Russia on vulnerability. Putin's Black Sea defeat. Putin's setbacks at sea stretch back to the first weeks of the conflict. After Russian forces took control of Snake Island in the sea shortly after the start of the war, the island became an important launching pad for the Russians. However, Ukraine regained the island and its liberation rallied the whole country. Naval drone strikes have also hit the Crimean port city of Sevastopol, which is controlled by Moscow, and an explosion in October severely damaged the Kerch Strait bridge connecting the Kerch Strait. Russia and the Crimean Peninsula. Ukraine has not claimed responsibility for the drone attack or the bridge explosion. Perhaps the most significant loss on the Black Sea was when Ukraine sank the Moskva. The flagship of Putin's Black Sea Fleet, the Moskva that was destroyed at the hands of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's forces on April 14, 2022, was both a colossal military defeat for Putin and a setback. Iconic. Reno called the sinking of the $750 million Moskva ship a reminder that ships are expensive assets vulnerable to Ukraine's defenses. He also said intelligence provided by the United States is likely to play an important role in enhancing Ukraine's capabilities at sea. Why will Putin return to the Black Sea? If more costly losses in the Black Sea remain a high risk for Russia, then why would Putin return there? Tactically, they need warships in that area in case Ukraine pushes to try to retake Crimea, Guy McArdle, editor of the Special Operations Forces report, told Newsweek. Although McArdle doesn't think retaking Crimea is Zelensky's main goal at this point, he does say that Putin could place more missiles in the Black Sea in the event of a preemptive strike on the peninsula. Island. Another reason could be that NATO troops, including US troops, participated in military exercises in the Black Sea off the coast of Romania at the end of March. When we do this, Russia tends to respond with a show of force, McArdle said. John Spencer, a retired U.S. Army major and chair of urban war studies at the Madison Policy Forum, told Newsweek that although Putin's navy was dealt a heavy blow in the Black Sea, but the region was and will continue to be important to Russia. Russia has launched cruise missiles from ships in the Black Sea from the very beginning of the war. Ukraine has been able to strengthen its coastal defenses, but ships that are out of range of missiles are still one of the main sources of bombings across Ukraine, Spencer said. Meaning they're strengthening that capability because they haven't had any success on the ground in over 8 months, adds. Regardless of the reason for the expansion of forces in the region, geopolitical strategist Alp Seven-Lysoi told Newsweek that NATO should act. Our commitment to defending our member states and allies under the NATO alliance involves a total strategic emphasis on the Black Sea as well as the Eastern Mediterranean, against even fleet building. Russia as well as outsmarts any of the Kremlin's missile strike capabilities, said Seven-Lysoi, a member of the Atlantic Council's advisory group and CEO of a private wealth management consortium. Based in Istanbul, said. Seven-Lysoi said NATO can establish maritime superiority from deploying hypersonic missile capabilities in NATO countries such as the Republic of Turkey, deploying the guided missile destroyer USS Zumwalt to the Black Sea, as well as such as the continued deployment of Turkish frigates. Diesel-electric submarines of the Type 214 class of submarines enter the areas. Meanwhile, Reno said that it is unreasonable for Russia to commit to a naval strategy when it cannot establish superiority in the sea. Are not. If I were a Russian planner, I would prefer land-based missiles, because they can be launched from Russian territory that Ukraine's Western supporters insist Ukraine cannot attack, and land-based missiles are easier to conceal and protect before launch. Newsweek has reached out to the Russian Foreign Ministry by email for comment. 4. Russian Parliament considers life imprisonment for treason. Russian lawmakers in the State Duma, or lower house of parliament, will consider imposing life sentences on treason. We propose to establish a life sentence for high treason, said the Moscow official on Telegram on Friday. Vasily Piskarev, the head of the Security and Anti-Corruption Commission. Piskarev also announced amendments that lead to harsher sentences for those convicted of terrorism and sabotage, including raising the maximum sentence for competing a terrorist act from 15 to 20 years. Piskarev said those found guilty of sabotage could face up to 20 years in prison, while those convicted of international terrorism could also face life sentences, up from 10 years. I hope that the changes we propose will be considered by the State Duma in the near future and supported by the deputies, said Piskarev. The amendments that have been prepared to the bill were passed on first reading, which will allow them to be reviewed in a timely manner. 5. Government official says, Russian engineers may have sabotaged jets sent to Ukraine. Newsweek published a report titled Russian engineers might have sabotaged jets being sent to Ukraine. Official, which means government official, says, Russian engineers may have sabotaged jets sent to Ukraine, for Ukraine. We invite you to follow the translation into Vietnamese through the presentation of Kim Thuy. According to Slovak Defense Minister Yaroslav Nad, Russian engineers may have sabotaged the jets sent to Ukraine. According to the Kyiv Independent, Defense Minister Nad recently said that Russian engineers are at an air base where several Slovak MiG-29 fighters are located. The jets were finally delivered to Ukraine amid the ongoing war with Russia, which began on February 24, 2022. According to the Slovak newspaper Denikin, Slovak Air Force General Lubomir Svoboda said that Russian engineers were present at the airbase because they had a better understanding of the MiG-29 jets and helped repair them. They can fly up and down, but that doesn't mean they're capable of fighting, Nad said. Defects appear only in parts that the Russians can already touch. NAD's comments came shortly after Slovakia announced that it was planning to send several MiG-29 jets to Ukraine to help in the fight against Russia. The first 4 MiG-29 fighters have been safely handed over to the armed forces of Ukraine and have left the territory of the Slovak Republic, Nad said on March 23. The government will continue. Help save the lives of innocent people, anyone who, for any reason or another, is being attacked. We are doing the right thing because it was Russia that invaded Ukraine, it is Russia that is in Ukraine, and it is when Russia withdraws that the war will end immediately. In the following weeks, the remaining planes will be delivered to Ukraine. However, for tactical reasons, we will not provide any further information in advance. Before Slovakia's announcement, Polish President Andrzej Duda announced that his country was sending MiG-29 jets to Ukraine. First, literally, in the next few days, we will deliver, as far as I remember, 4 planes to Ukraine in normal operating condition, Duda said last month. The rest is being prepared. Since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, which began with the invasion of Russia, several countries of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO for short, such as Slovakia and Poland, have provided Ukraine with military support package. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly asked Western nations for more aid. A group of U.S. senators recently sent a letter to Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, urging the U.S. to send F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. After speaking with American, Ukrainian and foreign leaders working to support Ukraine at the Munich Security Conference last month, we believe that the United States needs to take a hard look at the supply of F-planes. 16 for Ukraine, the letter said. However, President Joe Biden has said that he does not have any plans to send fighter jets to Ukraine at this time. Newsweek has reached out to the Ukrainian and Russian foreign ministries by email for comment. 6. The United States considers that despite its closer relationship, China has not provided great support to the Russian war effort. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said that although China and Russia have strengthened ties since the brutal invasion of Ukraine by the Kremlin, there is no evidence of Beijing providing unsolicited material assistance. Systematic way of the war effort of Moscow. The U.S. assessment comes as Russian President Vladimir Putin and his government are looking for avenues to evade Western sanctions and fill up his army. A senior finance ministry official said that so far, China is not willing to provide material assistance to Russia on a significant scale, pointing instead to Russia's efforts to source materials from North Korea and Iran. Senior U.S. officials acknowledged the coalition's efforts to punish those who aided the Russian invasion, including public comments by the United States and direct messages from European allies. Zhou sent, caused China to stop providing more substantive assistance to Russia. The Biden administration has worked to fill the sanctions regime's loopholes, expand intelligence sharing with allies, and strike areas where Russia hopes to avoid sanctions and control. Export control. The United States and its allies have also taken more direct action, sanctioning a Chinese satellite company that provided intelligence to Russian forces in January and putting several Chinese companies on a control list. U.S. exports. 7. China's Xi Jinping tells Macron that nobody benefits if the Ukraine war drags on, Chinese state media said on Friday night local time. According to the statement, Xi said, "It is in the interest of all parties concerned and the whole world to bring about a ceasefire and end the war as soon as possible." He said a political solution is the only right path for which all parties must shoulder the responsibility. In the announcement, China said it welcomes France to make concrete proposals on a political solution to the Ukraine crisis, adding that China will support France and is willing to play an important role. Constructiveness. According to the report, France appreciates China's international influence and is ready to cooperate and communicate closely with China to reach a political solution to the Ukraine crisis as soon as possible. In a joint statement by both countries, China and France said they support efforts to restore peace in Ukraine and oppose armed attacks on nuclear power plants and related facilities. To other nuclear weapons, while maintaining their position on nuclear non-proliferation. China and France reaffirmed their relations and expressed their willingness to jointly promote more development on the basis of both countries respecting each other's sovereignty, territorial integrity and major interests, according to the statement. The score includes 51 points. 8. Moscow doubts China can change its stance on Ukraine after Xi-Macron talks. Moscow is monitoring talks between Chinese leader Xi Jinping and French President Emmanuel Macron, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said on Friday. These are very important contacts, we monitor every development on this matter, Peskov told reporters on a regular call, adding that Russia and China have a relationship. Rich and multifaceted system. Asked if China is likely to change its stance on the war after the talks, Peskov said China is a major power that is very serious about its sovereign position. An opinion has been strongly formed. This is not a country that changes its position too quickly under external influences, Peskov added. The French President and European Union Commission head Ursula von der Leyen concluded a 3-day visit to China on Friday. Some background: China has declared neutrality in Russia's conflict with Ukraine and tries to create an image as a peace agent. But they have refused to condemn the Russian invasion and have continued to tighten economic and diplomatic ties with the Kremlin over the past year, including Mr. Xi's state visit to Moscow last month.